I know this isn't a huge issue that we're going to be talking about for a long time, but I do think it matters. It matters because every instance of media and Democrat hypocrisy that we see that goes entirely unchallenged just encourages them. It just means they've gotten away with it a little more, and they're more likely to do it again. And also, there's something deeply cathartic. There's something that it feels like you're purging some rot from your soul when you see the way these libs, these Democrats, continually lie, and the double standards they deploy. It helps you expunge that stuff a little bit, to just call it out. I don't know if it's going to have the intended effect. I don't know. But, you speak the truth without even knowing what the ultimate consequence will be. You speak the truth because, I know this will sound cheesy, but it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. And that's why I want to take a little trip down memory lane with you to something called the Logan Act. Remember the Logan Act? Just for a quick review, it stretches back to, the period of American foreign policy. So we're going back over 200 years here, a period of American foreign policy where there were people who were trying to, for a young nation still figuring out its own boundaries and borders, they did what was referred to as a freebooting. Vrijbuter comes from actually the Dutch. Freebooting, they would go and do their own version of foreign policy. So they create this thing, the Logan Act, that's meant to stop that from happening. They don't want people making deals on behalf of the U.S. government at a time when, there were far fewer people in America, and, you got European monarchies you could cut deals with. You got enemies of the United States. Anyway, you get the idea. No one has ever been successfully prosecuted under the Logan Act because it's a vague and unconstitutional law, and it should not be allowed to stay on the books. Congress should formally repeal it. But it turns into one of these things, like all these laws you'll see, what are they called? Blue laws in New England, they'll have them. You're not allowed to kiss your wife on the mouth on Sunday or something. And to this, every red-blooded American's like, yeah, buddy, try me. You going to arrest me for that? Good luck. And we just sort of let it lie. We just sort of, although they won't sell you liquor in some places on Sunday till a certain time. I mean, there are some laws that are still enforced around this stuff, but the crazier ones, we say, fine, it won't mean anything. But I disagree with the idea that we should leave things on the books as laws with the implicit promise that we're just not going to enforce them because, well, people of bad intention who don't operate in good faith will abuse that leeway. And we already have one of the most profound examples of this you can imagine, with the usage of the Logan Act as a pretext for an FBI ambush of General Flynn, who is still, as I speak to you now, being ground down into dust by a federal judge who has taken on the role of solo federal prosecutor because of Trump derangement syndrome that he suffers from. And there is no justice right now for General Flynn. I know it's gotten better, but there's still no justice. I think the president is going to probably have to pardon him. I think that might end up being the case. I don't know, unless they get this thing done before Trump leaves office. Because you can't really think a Biden administration is going to do the right thing by this guy. Of course not. He's on the enemies list. Because Democrats create things like enemies lists because there's a viciousness and a sadness at the heart of Democrat ethos. And it's challenged with, there's moral relativism. There's so much work that's needed to be done with the Democrat Party and what it really stands for. But that's not a conversation for another day. That's a conversation we have every day. But the Logan Act is not supposed to be something that anybody is ever really in jeopardy for. You're not supposed to be worried about the Logan Act unless you're a Republican. And then it's used as a pretext to start an investigation. And then the hope is that they will use they will bring you up with a process crime. That's what we're told about. That's what we know happened with General Flynn. They said that he lied about a conversation. They were investigating. Remember, they were investigating General Flynn because of an illegal leak. We never found out who the leaker was. No surprise, of course. But an illegal leak from to the press corps, and then the FBI under Comey And Comey was kind of, smirking and smug about it. Oh yeah, we'll send some guys over. It's during the transition. The administration's not going to know what hit them. So yeah, we'll send some guy over. And they sent over Peter Strzok, who we know is a deep state hack, and another, I think it was Pientka, the other FBI agent. And they sit down with him, and the whole basis of this is that he may have violated the Logan Act. And that was the excuse. And that's, Sally Yates now says, oh, well, I wasn't really comfortable with that. Yeah, she didn't stop it, though. You'll notice that. Didn't shut it down, trying to entrap General Flynn. And it was personal for the Obama administration clowns because they had done all this anti-Russia stuff after the election. Because remember, that was why Hillary lost, because of Russia. They had already decided this. So they done all this anti-Russia stuff. And then Trump just says, or Trump's incoming National Security Advisor, General Flynn, says, just take commensurate action. Don't escalate. Just respond. We're coming in. Let's basically trying to cool things down a little bit before, because you could also argue it's kind of irresponsible for the outgoing Obama administration to just start dropping bombs for the next guy to clean up. You're going to do stuff like that. Oh, okay. Yeah. Usually you get the pardons and the like the Mark Rich pardon by Bill Clinton. The guy was a fugitive financier, just basically a rich guy who fled the country, never even faced justice, and his wife was a big donor to Democrats, so they pardon him. Bill Clinton pardons him, and who was at the very top of the DOJ processing that pardon at the time? Eric Holder, who then came back as Obama's Attorney General. So he was, of course, rewarded for being a part of that highly dubious and unethical, legal but unethical pardon of Rich. So, we look now at these issues. We look at these, and some of you may actually be hearing my beloved French bulldog she sometimes has a little touch of asthma, so you might be hearing her in the background. Sorry about that, but she is with me as I'm doing the show. So it's not me, just so you know. Whatever noise you're picking up right now is not me. It is Tallulah, who is she's going to be fine. She just does this sometimes. All right. Then you have, so that was the application of the Logan Act against Flynn. It was all a scam, and they used this. They used this as a weapon against him. And you remember the media went to bat in general terms for the Logan Act. I mean, the media was willing to say at the time that the Logan Act is a law, right? I mean, it's not really a law, but it is a law. So it was all pretextual. It was all a bad faith basis for the ambush of General Flynn, and based upon him having a conversation with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador to the United States. Well, guess what? Ben Rhodes, who was Obama's foreign policy chief propagandist, was on TV talking about how Biden, who is not even yet officially the president-elect, despite what the media says, is having his team run around doing a bunch of foreign policy stuff. Play one.
The Trump people seem to be talking like they have some agency here. We're going to have the pageantry already of the president-elect announcing his advisory board. He's going to start announcing cabinet secretaries. The center of political gravity in this country and the world is shifting to Joe Biden. Foreign leaders are already having phone calls with Joe Biden talking about the agenda they're going to pursue January 20th. If that reality hasn't sunk in yet for some people in the White House, it will sink in when they have to leave on January 20th. And they're going to be in for a rude awakening here.
So they're already having conversation. Explain that to me. How is that not a violation of the Logan Act? Where's the Obama DOJ when you need them? Why aren't we sending in FBI agents to interview everybody who Joe Biden has tapped as a would-be cabinet member? I mean, what is he creating, a shadow government? He's not the president-elect. States have not certified. Votes are still being counted. Under what legal basis? The Logan Act is still law. That's what we were told. Under what legal basis are these Democrats having conversations about U.S. foreign policy under the perception that they're the incoming administration? And by the way, that didn't save General Flynn, right? He was the incoming. No one disagreed. He was the incoming national security advisor. And they used this against him. They used the Logan Act. So I would just remind you, friends, This is where we are. This is the circumstance in which we find ourselves, that one side will do this and get away with it, and the other, we're supposed to still think that General Flynn wasn't completely just screwed over by his own country, by his own DOJ, by FBI agents. I mean, they should really, anybody at the FBI and the DOJ who had any part of that, and the federal prosecutors, of course, the Mueller team, a bunch of Democrat hacks, they should be ashamed. They're disgusting. Disgusting. What they did is horrific. And they're slimy, dishonest, power-hungry, ideologically hardline leftists and libs and Democrats. And they ruined a good man. I mean, they've destroyed his reputation, bankrupted him. For what? Oh, okay. But we all see this. It's just expected. The Democrats go through life knowing that the same way they know that we won't riot, they know that we won't play hardball against them the same way they'll play hardball against us. That we're not gonna pretend that we're morons and that we believe some dossier compiled by some loser ex-British spy, and we're not gonna do that. They do that. We're not gonna do that. And now we can feel better about ourselves as people and understand that we're more ethical, but you also have to remember that their lack of ethics and their ruthlessness is an advantage. It's an advantage. We're trying to have a clean fight, and they're trying to throw low blows and kidney punches every chance they get. So you're always going to be at a disadvantage. At least Trump was coming along saying, fine, let's at least take off the gloves. I may not throw low blows, but I'll take off the gloves. And with this Logan Act thing, you just see it again. I know that Attorney General Barr has said that the DOJ is open to investigating fraud in the elections. Yeah, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to be shocked and awed by the Durham probe. Are we ever going to see? I think Biden, if he's able to take office, I think he'll just shut that. You'll never hear about that. It won't even. There'll be some pro forma report. We didn't find anything. You think the Democrats are above that? So if we don't have a Durham report in the next few weeks, it's going to be an absolute zero, and it's going to be only slightly better than zero, even if we do have a Durham report in the next few weeks, as I've been telling you. I told you the truth, didn't I? How many times I tell you, don't expect the Durham report. No one's getting frog marched. I'm sorry. I do like to point these things out because I get heat from people. There are a lot of folks, especially in conservative media. They say whatever they believe the largest percentage of the audience wants to hear. I don't do that. I respect all of you, and so I tell you all the truth.
Well, it's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters. And it's easier for a whole lot of people. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry if the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry if the president's going to be happier to have babies snatched away or send dreamers back for no reason. This is vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered. I can't breathe. That wasn't just George Floyd. That was a lot of people that felt that they couldn't breathe.
That was Van Jones on CNN. I thought about playing that for you yesterday. That was from a couple of days ago. And I didn't. But I thought you should hear it, actually. Because, look, I could do what a lot of folks would here, where they would start, look at me, they would start mocking a grown man crying on TV in this way over a presidential election. But one, I don't do this show, and I don't approach my work, and I don't view my politics as ever a vessel for being unkind, being cruel, being unnecessarily demeaning toward anyone. Yeah, I make fun of Pelosi and Bernie and all the rest of them. But, they're big, powerful people and they can take it. And I don't do so in a way that is meant to demean them as human beings or and belittle them in ways that that they would actually be, emotionally wounded by. So I'm just trying to say that there are guardrails here. And I see a man crying like this, and I think, why is this newsworthy to me? Because it is. And I think you need to hear stuff like that. Let's assume that was all, and I don't believe Van Jones is acting. Some of you might think that he is. I don't believe that Van Jones is acting. And I know Van Jones a little bit. We've debated before on TV. I've met him in person. I'll say he's a pleasant and affable fellow. Just I tell you the truth. Van Jones is a pleasant and affable fellow. And he's smart. I think he's wrong on pretty much every major question of American politics. Not every single one, but on pretty much every one. But I want you to hear this, because you have this really panic and paranoia around Trump that you need to understand how much there's still this period we're going to go through here where people are working through this. And when I said Trump derangement syndrome for all those years, when I talked about that, what I'm really talking about is a mental illness. I mean, I think that people internalized Trump for 4 years as president in ways that was honestly irrational. And it's a little sad. I actually heard this, and my first instinct wasn't that I was going to, make jokes about it or something. Because, look, Van Jones is clearly upset about it. The guy and I disagree politically, but I wish the man I have no ill will toward him. The only people I have ill will toward in this game are people that have come after me personally, and there's a number of them, but, and I'm a human being, and I'm allowed to have beef with people, and that's the reality. But, people that are just on the other side, I don't have any problem with them. I actually want them to agree with me, because I think that then we'll all be working for the same team, which is going to make their lives better, my lives better, make for a better country. But I heard the pain in this guy's voice, and it was a moment, a reminder for me of Democrats really, really convinced themselves, a lot of them, millions of them, that Trump was some kind of a monster, an unfeeling, evil monster who was going to do terrible things to them and their family. And this is a mass delusion. It's not supported by the facts. It's not supported by what happened in this country during his presidency. But understand that when we're making the case and we're trying to oppose the other side, this was widespread among millions. I would say a majority of the Democrat Party was suffering from some version of Trump derangement syndrome, where the facts, the reality didn't matter. They also felt like they needed to tell their kids that, don't worry, we're gonna fight against the fascism that's enveloping America or whatever. It's sad. It's a little unhinged, but it's also a little scary that Democrats could take themselves to that place. They're really that terrified of Trump? The answer was yes, they are. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better pray this crime never happens to you. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your home's title online because it's there. It's in the cloud. It's stored on servers. Then they use a quit claim deed to kick you off your home's title, put themselves on, and start taking out loans against your home. You often won't find out about this until the payment demands arrive, or perhaps even a foreclosure notice in the mail. You got to take action. The usual identity theft services do not protect you. You have to go with my friends that I trust to help with this problem specifically at Home Title Lock. They'll create a virtual barrier around your home's title. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com, enter the promo code RADIO, and you'll get 30 free days of protection. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO.
Implore everybody who's celebrating the day to remember, it's good to be a humble winner. Remember when I was here 4 years ago? Remember how bad that felt? Remember that half the country right now still feels that way. Please remember that. Remember that for the first time in the history of America, the life expectancy of white people is dropping because of heroin, because of suicide. All these white people out there that feel that anguish, that pain, that mad because they think nobody cares. And maybe they don't. Let me tell you something. I know how that feels. I promise you, I know how that feels. You're a police officer. And every time you put your uniform on, you feel like you got a target on your back. You're appalled by the ingratitude that people have when you would risk your life to save them. Oh, man, believe me, I know how that feels. Everyone knows how that feels. But here's the difference between me and you. You guys hate each other for that. And I don't hate anybody. I just hate that feeling. That's what I fight through. That's what I suggest you fight through.
Dave Chappelle over the weekend at Saturday Night Live. I didn't hear the rest of the show. I didn't watch the show. I don't like Saturday Night Live. I think it's generally just trash. And I mean that it's not funny comedy, never mind the politics. But that's what the beginning of a conversation about unity feels like. It starts from a place of empathy. Now, Dave Chappelle said some stuff during the BLM movement that I disagree with, I think is unfair. But that's his perspective. And he's clearly a Democrat. I think he's a Bernie Sanders supporter. But I will say that even just this message of stop hating the other side, stop it. That's, and speaking to Democrats about that, really, that's the beginning of a conversation. If you really want to talk about unifying the country, we're very divided over some critical ideas. I mean, Democrats are never going to convince me, just to pick one off the top of my head, that their position on babies in the womb is anything other than barbaric and evil. They're never going to convince me of that. But okay, there are other places where we're all just Americans and we can agree to disagree and we don't have to have the knockdown, drag out fights. But I appreciated here that Dave Chappelle made the appeal to everybody. Let's understand, the other side, Trump supporters have emotions and feelings too, and they all have their view of what the country should be like. And this is the beginning of making things just bringing the temperature down a little bit, if that's even possible, which I'm not even sure it is right now. I think that increasingly it's just going to take time. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of the left, you'd hope that they will learn from the failures over time of their policies. But look at California. The California effect is playing out all across the country. They took over what was a Republican state with tremendous dynamism, infrastructure. California is one of the most gorgeous places along the coast in the world. It really is. And an incredible climate and arable land. And there's so much about California, beautiful mountains, all this stuff they've got, right? And you look at all of this, and they're destroying it. The Democrat policies are ruining the state of California. It's a place you don't really want to live anymore, unless you're really, really rich, and then you just insulate yourself from all the bad policies. But what happens, those Democrats flee. We saw this in this most recent election. They flee, they go to other places, and they don't take the lessons with them about what didn't work before. They think now they'll do it better. And this is one of the continuing fallacies of socialism and communism. I'm just going to say it. It's, real communism has never been tried, right? Real socialism has never been tried. To that, I also want to say, well, I guess real capitalism has never been tried either. We either can look at the way systems play out in reality all around us and look at history and try to learn from it, which I think is one of the foundational mindsets for being a conservative in America. What has worked, what is true, and what can we learn from these things? But on the other side, they continue to just say, we'll do it better the next time. Don't pay attention to this failure. Going forward, we'll figure this one out. Let's assume that it was a failure of implementation, not a failure of ideology. So the California effect is something I think is very troubling, because what I meant, why I'm thinking about this with the Dave Chappelle comments about trying to just take yourself to a position of put yourself on the other side's shoes, right? And I know Republicans, and I've been pointing this out, I think it's very valid. Look how we've reacted to an election that was we thought we won, at least a lot of people did. I didn't. I was unwilling to say it. But we thought election night Trump was going to win. It looked like it. We wake up the next day and all of a sudden, no, he didn't win. There's no rioting. There's no looting. You know, that's a basic decency that should become the standard in our politics. And we should insist that the other side adopt that approach too. There's really no leeway on that. There's not a negotiation to be had over whether there will be riots or not because people didn't get their preferred political outcome. But, you know, there's a part of me that feels like even if Democrats get their way and we see how disastrous and damaging so many of their policies really will be, I'm not sure that they will learn. I think that the ability for the left to self-correct is always limited. You could say their self-correction is self-limited because of some of these ideas that have become very central to their thinking. One of them is that it's never the results, it's always the implementation, and we'll do it better next time. Right? If you're looking for a foundational flaw in left-wing thinking, it's that central planning is a good idea, and people should not maximize individual decision-making and individual freedom for the benefit of all society. Notice maximize is not the same thing as a libertine, free-for-all, do whatever you want. No, maximize. Always pushing for as much as we can in our lives to be determined by individuals at the micro level. Our whole system of government is supposed to, if you look at the vision of the founders, be built to that end. But Democrats come across they come across this time and again, and what their response is always some version of, you messed it up, or we weren't, it's a little bit like the mask theorizing. Notice that when the numbers don't make sense for them with the masks, when it doesn't flatten the curve in time, when it doesn't work as a countermeasure, it's because we didn't do it well enough. It's never that the idea maybe is fundamentally flawed. See, I think it's something even deeper than just brainwashing and political ideology. I think that people who believe in this left-wing thinking, I'm going to say it's their brain structure, but it's so intrinsic to how they view everything that it's very difficult to pull them away from this. If only the smart people are in charge, making the smart decisions for all the rest of us, everything in society will be better. It feels like that's just hardwired in their synapses. Very difficult to get them to see who are the smart people. What evidence is there that the smart? How do we pick the smart people? How much authority do they have? Right? You start to chip away at the central planning ethos that's central to socialism and collectivism and these ideas the Democrat Party represents. I mean, the Democrat Party in America, it's effectively the Socialist Party. We just call it the Democrat Party. I mean, you look in the case of Europe where there are open socialist parties, and the difference between what they want and what the Democrats want is, at best, a matter of degree. In some cases, it's not even really apparent. But these are the big ideas that we're going to continue to grapple with and try to. Part of it is trying to understand the other side. Meanwhile, they're just going to look at us and be snide. They're going to say, feel the burn, stuff like that. I mean, speaking of comedians who are the absolute worst, Stephen Colbert, here's one of his jokes. Play 20.
After Biden's victory was announced, people everywhere in America flooded the streets, from Times Square to Denver to San Diego to Miami to Atlanta. That is the biggest presidential rally of all time. Never a good sign when the majority of Americans react to you losing your job the way they did to us getting bin Laden. It feels like America is, what's the word? Great again.
See, that's a smug jerk move from a guy who does nothing to really help anybody these days. He just feeds into the machinery of Democrat political delusion, gets a big fat paycheck to do it, and believes somehow that he's one of the good guys. Believes that what he's doing is worthwhile in America. And unfortunately, it's not. It's not. Just another voice saying the same stuff that all the rest on the left are saying. So that's one version of it. There's another, which is just, shut up and take it, Trump supporters. You get this from Whoopi Goldberg, play 23. play clip 23.
I want to say to all those people who don't believe that Americans actually got out and voted, let me say this to you. When you know who was elected 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton didn't say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right, stop the count. She didn't say, this isn't right, I'm not going for it. She didn't say any of that. So all of you, suck it up. Suck it up like we sucked it up. And if you are not sure that you're comfortable with Joe Biden, do what we did. Find things and then take it to the law. And if the law says it's something to look at it. But from now on, suck it up. Grow the pair for him that he can't grow for himself. Because this is ridiculous. You're not sure that he won. You're bringing into question all these Americans who voted legally.
So there's a lot of very sloppy thinking here from a political talk show host. I know. I mean, has had quite a career. I don't know. I will get into she's a tremendous success story, and I couldn't begin to understand exactly what the particular appeal and skill set would be, but she has been a tremendous success story. So there's that. Paid millions of dollars to say very foolish things on television about politics. And here's just an example of what we're up against. She'll say things like Hillary didn't. The assumption or the baked into this analysis is that Hillary didn't refuse to accept. I mean, that's crazy, right? We all know that Hillary, the whole Russia thing was already going on with the deep state. The Hillary DNC paid for the dossier. They ran the ultimate dirty trick against the Trump administration and then tried to undo the Trump administration using a special counsel in the Department of Justice to do it, running effectively would-be, Hillary cabinet appointees, people like McCabe, who clearly thought that his future was going to be either the next FBI director or maybe director of the CIA or, who knows. Use those people inside a Trump administration that he inherited to try to use the law against him to bring the Trump team down, to maybe even prosecute the president of the United States or his family members. They did prosecute some of his advisors. You're going to talk to us about being good sports and sucking it up? No. Not taking that lecture from libs. Not happening. Not even a little bit. Not even for a second.
So just after a week after the polls closed, Democrats and the media want to ignore these clear irregularities and rush to call states as one and end the certification and canvass process. We're hearing we need to unite, we need to come together. Well, for the thousands of people who spent time and hours going out to be part of this process, who feel disenfranchised, who don't feel like there was transparency, we can't do that unless we search out all these irregularities. Even one instance of voter fraud should be too many for all of us. We intend to ensure that every lawful voter has their vote counted in accordance with the law, that observers are granted the access they are due under state law, and that any irregularities that have occurred, whether by malicious intent or incompetence, are investigated to the fullest extent allowed under the law.
Democrats demanded, the media, an appendage of the Democrat Party or vice versa, went along with it. They demanded a 3-year special counsel investigation of the Trump campaign and the Trump administration for Russia collusion that did not exist. Why can't we have 6 weeks or so of looking into election fraud and irregularities, see if it's there? Shouldn't Democrats want this? Wouldn't it be better for all of us if at the end of this whole process we could say, you know what, we looked for it, we thought there was fraud, we thought it was there, turns out it's not. Turns out there wasn't any, or not enough for us to change any votes or change any states. Wouldn't that be better for all of us? I would like to know that. I would like to know. And I've told you all along, I will absolutely accept it if we get to that point and somehow Joe Biden had this miraculous turnout. And we've heard, 100,000 votes for just Biden, nobody else in Georgia. Maybe the orange man bad theorizing of the Democrats for years had the intended effect. Maybe that's possible. But I do believe that there's really no argument against this right now. And the Democrats wanted to just move on. It reminds me a bit of MoveOn.org, a horrible left-wing organization, was founded because they wanted to move on from the Clinton impeachment. Let's forget all about this. Let's forget about what this guy did, this, slimy would-be felon, Bill Clinton. Let's forget about it. And now they're just going to attack anybody who looks at the actual coverage of the situation. Play 22.
Two parallel Americas. It cannot be more stark. And if you're not seeing what's going on in right-wing media, you're missing half the story. I mean, people's Facebook feeds, tens of millions of Americans on Facebook and Twitter are seeing this nonsense all across television and social media. And there's no one in charge. No one in charge except President Trump setting the tone and then others falling in line. There's no one at Fox News that is saying, this is crazy, this is irresponsible, this is dangerous. The Murdochs are letting this run rampant all over Fox News. And there are moments where, once every 24 hours, there will be some pushback on the lies about voter fraud. But that is not the story. The story is all of these propaganda shows telling the audience that there might have been mass voter fraud and that President-elect Biden is not the legitimate president-elect, and that you shouldn't believe what you're hearing in the rest of the media.
Brad Stelter was telling you, first of all, that Biden is not the legitimate president-elect. The states haven't certified their elections yet. So I'm a fact-based journalist. Really, I know Zucker's pulling the strings over there and telling you what to say, buddy, but come on, give me a break. Can't even cover this stuff, can't even talk about it. Not even talk about the possibility of fraud, but Russia collusion, that was on the up and up.